President of the United States Donald Trump has effectively opened the way for Ukraine to use long-range weapons against Russia. At the same time, the attention of the world's media is focused on Ukraine's request for Tomahawk cruise missiles, a system often referred to as the Golden Missile of the United States. What is known about these missiles, how far they can reach, and whether Ukraine will be able to use them? And also how the Kremlin is reacting to this. Watch now, in the TSN report. US President Donald Trump has effectively given Ukraine the green light to use long-range weapons against Russia. This is evidenced by the explanations of his special representative Keith Kellogg on Fox News. He emphasized that Kyiv has never demanded the deployment of American troops, but has consistently insisted on receiving weapons and the right to use them to strike enemy territory. According to Kellogg, permission for such actions is granted in different ways. Sometimes it is given, sometimes not. In his opinion, all decisions depend on the president, who, as commander-in-chief, sets the policy and everyone else must carry it out. Commenting on Trump's position, the special representative essentially confirmed that Ukraine can carry out strikes at long distances. And this is authorized by the White House. Use the opportunity to strike at long distances. There are no such things as safe zones, he noted. That is why President Volodymyr Zelensky last week asked Trump for Tomahawk missiles. The final decision on providing them has not yet been made and depends personally on the President of the United States. At the same time, on the eve, U.S. Vice President J.D. Vance confirmed that discussions are already underway in the Trump administration about the possibility of transferring these missiles to Ukraine. Vance emphasized that Trump will make a decision on this issue based on the interests of the United States. According to Vance, the American leader acts this way with all challenges in the field of foreign and defense policy. In addition, Vance stressed that Russia is refusing any formats of negotiations regarding ending the war against Ukraine. He emphasized that the position of the United States has been an active pursuit of peace since the very beginning of the administration's work. President Donald Trump. According to the Wall Street Journal, during a meeting on the sidelines of the UN Assembly, Zelensky asked Trump to provide more long-range missiles and permission to use such weapons to strike targets on Russian territory. According to media reports, Trump responded by saying he would consider lifting restrictions on the use of American weapons on enemy territory. However, as the publication's sources clarify, he did not give any specific guarantees. Meanwhile, the Ukrainian delegation is already preparing for new negotiations in Washington, this time with the head of the Pentagon, Pete Hegseth. After all, until now, the Trump administration had not allowed Kyiv to use ATACMS missiles and other long-range systems against Russian targets. However, the meeting in New York had an unexpected result. Zelensky directly asked the U.S. for Tomahawk missiles. And Trump himself, after the negotiations for the first time in a long while, spoke rather optimistically about Ukraine's prospects to regain all its territories within internationally recognized borders. In an interview with Axios, Zelensky noted that he asked Trump to provide Ukraine with a new weapon system that could force Russian President Vladimir Putin to agree to negotiations. According to Zelensky, Trump replied that he would work on it. Later, the president of Ukraine confirmed the request on September 27th at a press conference in Kyiv, quoting, "We submitted a detailed list of needs with illustrations and explanations. This is part of a $90 billion deal, but we are ready for separate agreements. We have sold Cuban systems." He avoided directly mentioning Tomahawk, citing the sensitivity of the topic, but did not deny media reports. According to media reports, the request included not only missiles but also platforms for launching them, such as ships or bombers, which Ukraine does not have. Zelensky reported that, at the end of September or the beginning of October, a Ukrainian delegation will hold technical meetings in the United States regarding the purchase of weapons. "We discussed and agreed on the main points with the president. Now we are moving on to practical implementation," Zelensky emphasized. Meanwhile, the press secretary of the Russian dictator Peskov stated that the Kremlin is aware of the statements by Vance and Kellogg regarding the possibility of supplying Tomahawk missiles to Ukraine. According to him, reports about such supplies are being analyzed. At the same time, he emphasized that there is no panacea that can currently change the situation on the front for Kyiv. "There is no magic weapon, and whether it's Tomahawks or other missiles, they won't be able to change the dynamics," he stated. He did. The Tomahawk is the United States Golden Missile. Its range is 1,250 to 2,500 kilometers. Expert estimates put it at up to 1,600 kilometers, 450 kilograms of explosives, high-precision guidance. This is one of the most famous and effective cruise missiles in the world, developed in the US to strike important targets at long distances. And it has repeatedly proven its effectiveness in real combat conditions, from the Balkans and Libya to Iraq and Syria. The Tomahawk surpasses the ATACMS, which the Ukrainian armed forces are already using, as well as Ukrainian drones, which are often jammed. According to the Washington Post, the Tomahawk would allow key targets in Russia to be reached, from depots in Rostov to command centers in Moscow. Reuters notes that this is a shift in Biden's policy, who had previously refused because of the so-called escalation. Now Trump, frustrated by Putin's stubbornness, is considering the option of selling missiles to Europe, for example, to Britain or Poland, so that they could transfer them to Ukraine. The German publication Deutsche Welle notes that Zelensky's request for Tomahawks is a radical step. The Biden administration refused to supply them due to the risk of escalation, limiting itself to ATACMS. Trump, on the contrary, sees the missiles as a tool to pressure Putin into negotiations. This is not just a weapon, but a signal. The United States is ready to play hardball, the author writes. The publication warns of technical problems. Tomahawks require carrier ships, submarines, or B-52 bombers, which Ukraine does not have. Without a platform, the missiles are just paper, quotes Dolce Way expert Strand Corporation. An alternative is to transfer the missiles through allies like Britain or Poland, but this involves complicated logistics. The head of security programs at the Center for Global Studies Strategy 21 also draws attention to the question of how many such cruise missiles the United States can give to Ukraine and whether this will happen at all. He recalled that the Tomahawk is a naval cruise missile and that previously the US did not have land-based equivalents in its arsenal. After the signing of the Intermediate Range Nuclear Forces Treaty in 1977, land-based launches in the United States were decommissioned and destroyed in accordance with the orders of the George H.W. Bush administration in 1991. After the official withdrawal of the US and Russia from this treaty in 2023, the mobile ground-based missile system Typhon was developed, designed to launch cruise missiles, Tomahawks, and multi-purpose standard SM-6 missiles. Currently, there are very few such systems in the US arsenal, unlike the Tomahawks themselves, which are more numerous. As the expert explains to UZH, the key issue is not so much the supply of the missiles themselves, but rather the possibility of their practical use. The availability of ground-based launchers like the Typhon is crucial. Without the appropriate platforms, the missiles will remain just munitions without a launch system. Moreover, the Typhon is compatible with standard missiles like the SM-6, which can intercept ballistic missiles. The president of Ukraine, Volodymyr Zelensky, also announced that Ukraine is preparing a technological headquarters initiative which will focus on developing the country's long-range capabilities, particularly on the mass production of various types of strike weapons, drones, and missiles. He noted that the day before he had held lengthy negotiations with manufacturers, after which specific instructions were given to the Ministry of Defense and military leadership to speed up the work and establish serial production of weapons. This statement was made against the backdrop of powerful strikes by Ukraine's defense forces on the CHP in Belgorod and the Luch electrical substation, as well as on the Russian Karachev electro-detail plant, which, according to the Navy, was hit by Ukrainian Neptune missiles. After a series of explosions in Belgorod, a significant part of the city was left without electricity, water supply, and internet. Due to the power outage, elevators stopped working, stores are operating in a limited capacity and only accept cash. Public transport is running with disruptions. On some streets, there is no street lighting and traffic lights have stopped working. The governor of the Belgorod region, Vyacheslav Vladko, reported that water utilities and hospitals have switched to backup power sources to support the city's critical infrastructure. Where have we ended up? Now this is an attraction. Let me remind you, earlier Western media, including the Wall Street Journal, reported that the Pentagon had, for several months, been restraining the use of Western long-range weapons against targets on Russian territory. In the new administration, the U.S. Department of Defense implemented high-level approval procedures for the use of long-range systems provided to Ukraine against targets deep within Russian territory. The existence of this procedure was not publicly announced, writes the Wall Street Journal. The decision to authorize such a strike belongs personally to the Secretary of Defense. This rule applies both to ATACMS missiles and to the British-French Storm Shadow cruise missiles, whose targeting partially depends on American data, sources have confirmed. According to the publication, Kyiv has at least once requested permission to use ATACMS against targets deep inside Russia. The White House administration justified this by seeking to reduce the risk of escalation and to create conditions for negotiations. However, disappointed by the lack of progress in peace negotiations and, in particular, by the Kremlin's uncompromising stance, Trump has been speaking out more sharply against dictator Putin. And in one of his latest comments on the topic of Russian aggression against Ukraine, he called Russia a paper tiger, thus hinting at its weakness despite its apparent strength. And during the final press conference with British Prime Minister Keir Starmer, the American president stated that he feels obliged to manage the war in Ukraine. He also said that Vladimir Putin has let him down. Meanwhile, Polish Foreign Minister Sikorski stated that Trump likes winners, which is why he has sided with Ukraine. And do you agree that Trump has changed his position on Ukraine? Share your thoughts below this video. Stay with TSN so you don't miss the main news. That's all from me for now. I'll see you in the next episodes.